Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents with me, your host Valerie, and sometime kitty co-hosts Ms. Purrington and Mookie. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. In addition to podcasts, Comedy Wham brings you articles, album reviews, our advice column, Rochelle Takes on Comedy, our festivals page, which lists upcoming festivals across the country and the world, and many more resources. What we're best known for is our events page for live comedy shows in Austin, Houston, and DFW, where 100% of the entries you see come from comics and producers. If you want your show featured on the calendar, click the Submit a Show button from the top of the homepage or events page to complete the short survey. It's free and easy. Tag us on your Instagram stories and we'll share your show promo to our Instagram followers. Want to support these resources that we provide? Well, you can donate to Comedy Wham on PayPal, Venmo, or even Patreon. Click the Support CW icon on our homepage at the top right to see the ways that you can help us. Now back to our podcast. Launched in 2016, the Podcast Project brings you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations and will usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the Austin comedy scene one of the best in the country. If you like this podcast, please rate and review us. Today, I'm talking to somebody that I recently had on our Comedy Wham showcase out here in Lakeway. You can see him perform all over Austin. I actually caught him hosting at the Velve for the great Aaron Brooks return last December, I think that was.
Yeah,
right?
It was December.
Okay. And I recently caught him also performing on Fallout Tonight, which is a great little variety show hosted by Duncan Carson at Fallout Theater. He is the host and producer of Clowns for a Cause. It's a comedy show benefiting Austin Pets Alive. Hopefully that comes back soon. And now Comedy Wham presents our guest, Ajit Krishnamoorthy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you,
I'm super
Ajit.
excited to be here. And congratulations on 8 years.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's been a ride.
Yeah.
That's all I can say is it's been a ride. When I posted about the 8 years, on this day 8 years ago was our first episode. Like, it was just a hobby, and it was just, I really was interested in talking to people off stage that I, would laugh at on stage. But I'm like, what's their backstory? I want to know. And it started with all local Austin comics, and then Laundry's Ready. And then it became, well, there's a comedy festival coming in town. Is there somebody that I know about that I could talk to? And now it's kind of morphed into, it's a blend of Austin and touring comics. And every once in a while I get a random opportunity to talk to somebody that I would never imagine I'd have a chance to talk to, but I'm on somebody's list. And so, I get to talk to Murr from Impractical Jokers, or Howie Mandel.
That's amazing.
Andy Kindler, it's just Brad Williams. It's wild.
Wow.
It's really wild. So thank you.
Nice.
And then it's also morphed into the events page, and, it's just... And then I'm tooting my own horn here, because I don't know if anybody knows about any of this stuff. It's not like I talk about it all the time.
It deserves to be celebrated.
Well,
this is
sure.
a big milestone.
Yeah. And then getting to write for the Austin Chronicle about the Austin comedy scene is pretty cool, too. So
That's nice.
Yeah. But let's talk about you for the next hour, Ajit.
Yeah.
That's enough of me. I have an official icebreaker question.
Go for it.
And you have confessed that you have listened to a few of these episodes. So I'm going to ask you the question, and then we'll debrief afterwards. Are you ready?
Yeah.
One word to describe your past.
Grateful.
Oh my gosh, you're so kind. So I want to know, since you kind of pieced together maybe that I always ask the same question to kick off, did you think, oh, I'm gonna do my episode with Comedy Wham today, let me prepare, or did you just say, no, I'm just, whatever comes to mind is what I say?
So I've listened to a bunch of your episodes. We were talking about it previously a little, and it's awesome what you're building in the scene and putting a spotlight on comics here. So I've listened to a bunch of my friends' episodes, so I kind of knew this was coming.
Yeah.
But I think in general, gratitude and being grateful has been a big part of my life.
Yeah.
And it was a no-brainer for me. Like, that's going to be my word.
Oh, nice. You did not grow up in in the States from my research. Was comedy a part of your life growing up? And tell us where you grew up.
So I grew up in Mumbai, India.
Okay.
And I lived there until I was 21. I came to the U.S. for grad school, and I've been here for about 5.5 years now.
Yeah.
And comedy has always been in my life in some form or another. Growing up, there was a TV channel. So my family speaks this language called Tamil, which is a South Indian language.
Okay.
And on cable TV, there was a TV channel that would only show clips of comedy movies 24/7.
Oh.
Comedy clips of like other movies and stuff. And my brother and I, we'd watch it all day, and we loved, we would memorize it. We'd like quote comedy scenes at each other, and then we'd watch other variety comedy shows. And stand-up comedy, as it is known and loved in the U.S., wasn't a very big part of the Indian comedy scene and my life growing up. But I think we got Comedy Central on cable TV when I was in ninth grade, I think. And that was my first like look into the world of stand-up and American stand-up specifically. And I loved it right from that time. And yeah, I'm very grateful that I grew up, enjoying a lot of comedy.
And I'll just put it out there in the air, you're a very smart person.
Thank you.
With a graduate degree. So did you do any comparison of, this is what I've grown up with Indian comedy, and now I'm getting to see American comedy through Comedy Central. Were there any noticeable differences for you?
Yeah, it was quite different in that American comedy is... So Indian comedy, especially comedy on TV, India is a more conservative society. Okay. So the comedy that you would see there is super clean and super family friendly. So stand-up, having it being American stand-up on Comedy Central, it referenced a lot of adult themes and, not necessarily family friendly content. Yeah. That was definitely an interesting change, differences that I observed. And
Did India and the general public have any outcries about Comedy Central coming in and kind of ruining that? This is clean comedy. This is what we like.
Yeah.
No outsiders are going to soil this.
It was still clean. So India has a broadcast censor department. So anything that has to go on TV has to be vetted by them. Okay. So it was very censored version. Yeah. So I remember watching like Sugar Sammy, someone that comes to mind. He's an Indian American comedian. Yeah. I would watch his special on Comedy Central, and like they'd cut out the punchline or no. I was like, wait, what happened?
Oh no, that's the worst timing. Yeah.
But it was heavily censored and still clean, but like it would reference some other adult themes and
Oh my gosh. Wow.
That was the one thing that like stood out to me.
Yeah. And growing up, did you other than, you and your brother, did you perform at all? Like, I have no clue about Indian society. And like, here I can ask an American comic, did you do theater? Did you do acting classes? So, is that even an option for kids and students growing up?
Stand-up comedy is well accepted now in India. It's like in the mainstream. There are a lot of comedians coming out of major cities in India, but growing up there was no scene to speak of. So there were no opportunities to perform. When I was in college, a friend of mine and I would talk about, so in Mumbai, I grew up in Mumbai. In Mumbai, there was only one comedy club, and they would do one open mic night once a week. And like one show night once a week. And this was back in 2014, 2015.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Mumbai, my God.
Mumbai, yeah.
Thinking of Bao. Isn't Mumbai like one of the biggest cities?
Yeah, it population-wise, I think it is the biggest city in India.
And it has one open mic.
It had one open mic in 2014. Like, there was no comedy scene to speak of back in the day. And a few of my friends and I, we would watch a lot of comedy, but there was no Indian comedy to, enjoy. And we would talk about always like going to check out the open mic or check out a live show, but it kind of never happened because it was like in South Bombay, we'd call it, which was like the more upscale part of town, which is downtown, you can call it, farther away from like where my friends lived.
Yeah.
So it never happened. I never got a chance to like watch live stand-up in India. It was only when I got to America, when I went to the University of Minnesota for my grad school. And in grad school, in college, we had a comedy club. And that was my first real meeting with people who have actually been doing comedy, and it was a bunch of students, right? It was just a bunch of like-minded students who, some of them have been doing comedy for a few years, and some of them, like me, have never held a microphone before. So we'd all get together every week and write jokes, workshop some stuff, and go to open mics together. And every month we would put together a showcase of the comedy club members, and that was my like first introduction into me actively doing or writing jokes.
Yeah. Okay, so talk about your decision to come to grad school in America. I mean, it sounds like you hit the ground running with joining this comedy club. Were you like thinking, no, I'm going to go to America, I'm going to get this degree, but also, because is that campus in Minneapolis?
Yes.
So there's a great comedy club in Minneapolis that's very highly regarded.
Yeah, the Acme Comedy Club.
Yeah, so like, were you putting all these pieces together thinking, okay, I'm going to go to grad school, I'm going to get into Acme, I'm going to do this comedy club, it's all going to start now?
So I didn't know anything about like Acme. I didn't know anything about doing comedy per se before coming to grad school, but I did know that there was a comedy club. So when I got it accepted at the University of Minnesota, and then I was like, I'd accepted that I'm going to go there. I started looking into like what the student life is like there, and that's when I learned that there are some such things called student clubs where like-minded students come together, do things together. And I learned that there's a comedy club, and comedy is something that has always interested me. Yeah. So I thought I'd wanna. I messaged them on Facebook before coming to Minnesota.
Oh my
I was
God.
like, "Hey, what's up with y'all? Do y'all meet? What's the deal?" And they're like, "Yeah, we meet every week. Come join us in one of our meetings." And I just went without any expectations, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I loved being a part of that group.
Yeah. And what was your approach to writing comedy? Because you've grown up in this environment, and now you're in a completely different environment with fellow. I would imagine you've got a diverse mix of fellow club members. Some coming from America, maybe some coming from other global scenes, who have like different sensibilities. So, what did you bring in, as your sensibility?
Yeah, it was. That's a good question. It's definitely, as someone who was basically fresh off the boat, it was definitely, everything was new to me. Everything about America was new to me. And, I think that's what I kind of brought in with me of like my observations and my differences and perspectives. Of like, oh, y'all just take this thing for granted, which is crazy to me. And that's the kind of approach that I brought. Yeah.
And do you remember your first time like performing on stage?
Yeah. So it was funny. So every month, as I mentioned, we put together a monthly student showcase. As opposed to most comedians who start out at an open mic, I started out on a showcase.
Yeah. Nice.
So it was really fun where my first time ever, I was so scared, but I signed up. This was the October showcase, 2019. And I'd written some jokes down, but I was so nervous. I had never like gone up on stage to like perform anything. I was not in like theater or dance or anything of that sort.
Yeah.
I can't sing. So that was my first time going up on stage. And when I went up on stage, I brought a bunch of papers with me. Initially, everyone was like, you should write down bullet points. But I was like, no, I'll forget. I wrote down my entire 3-minute set, word for word. Went up on stage with like 3 sheets of paper.
Oh my God, a sheet. Okay, can I tell people what your profession is?
Yeah, go
because
for it.
It's very on brand. You're an engineer, which requires exact precision and accuracy in everything that you do. Everything has to be planned out. So this is very on brand.
Yeah. I was so scared. I was like sweating. But I went up and I got some laughs, which I was so happy with.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is what I want to do. This is great.
So it didn't scare you away.
No, thankfully I got some laughs.
And when you said earlier that you've been here for 5 years, in my mind, I thought you meant you'd been in Austin 5 years. You've been in the country, for 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so happy almost anniversary of both
Thanks.
doing comedy and being in America. So today, when I watch you on stage, you don't have the 3 pieces of paper in front of you anymore. How long did it take you to start like trusting yourself that you didn't have to have that kind of control or safety blanket with you?
Right. I am super grateful that I started out in that kind of an environment with other club students where I after every showcase that we would do, we'd like sit together, and one of the senior members of the club, Armand Shah, he would make he'd note down the points and pros and cons and like tips, and we'd all like debrief. And I feel like having gone through that supportive environment where everyone is looking out for each other, and I got to learn how to hold the microphone correctly. I got to learn that it's not considered okay to like go up with your entire set written down on a piece of paper with you. And I learned so much from that supportive environment, which I would probably not have gotten if I had just started going out to an open mic. Because at the end of the day, comedy is you're on your own, basically. You have your friends and everything. And if you have a good supportive group of people to have your back, that's amazing. And I'm glad that I had that. And I learned from my peers and my friends and other senior members in the comedy scene. You mentioned Minneapolis. The scene in Minneapolis, it's a great little scene. There are not that many comics as compared to like Austin or New York, but it's a very supportive scene, and there's a lot of quality comedians out there. So I got to learn a lot from those people in there.
Anybody that you've seen like rise up from your crew of comedy club members?
So Armand Shah that I mentioned, he's a senior. He was also graduating the same semester that I did. He now is in New York, and he produces a lot of shows, and he used to produce a lot of shows in Minneapolis and now in New York. And
that's cool.
I remember a bunch of comics. Ali Sultan, he's a great Minneapolis comic. Okay. He has done Colbert, he's done Late Night. Wow. He now flutters back and forth between New York and Minneapolis. And Chloe Radcliffe, she's now based out of New York. She started out in Minneapolis. So it was great to see a lot of these quality comedians who are now making a name for themselves in the global comedy scene.
So the next question that I have for you, for a lot of people that are starting out in comedy, their draw, especially in that 19 to 20 year range, the year 2019, 2020, they're thinking about coming to Austin because they know it's a open comedy scene. But for you, it's probably your job that led you here more so than want to experience the Austin comedy scene. Did you know about the Austin comedy scene before you made a move after graduating?
Yeah, it's a good question. So after I graduated, I was living in San Diego for about 2 to 2.5 years. Okay. And at that time, I was not doing very much comedy because I moved to San Diego in February 2020, right before the pandemic kind of hit full force. I think I moved to San Diego, and in less than 2 weeks, the state of California went into a shutdown. Oh, gosh. So I was like brand new to comedy. I didn't know any comics in San Diego. I didn't even know anything about comedy, so to speak. Yeah. So, as a newer comic in a new city, I almost stopped doing comedy entirely. So I had a big 1.5 years, almost 2 year gap in comedy. And then when things were slowly picking back up, I got a job that wanted me to move out to Austin. And that's kind of what brought me to Austin primarily. Yeah. But I had heard about the growth that the Austin scene was experiencing and the spotlight that was put on it with, Creek in the Cave moving here and Joe Rogan putting a spotlight on the scene. And there was a lot of buzz around the Austin scene. So I'm grateful that I got to move to Austin, but comedy was not the primary reason that brought me here. It was just a happy accident.
Well, how long did it take for you to start figuring out that there was a lot of comedy that you could partake of and get to your first show or open mic here in Austin. And what mic was it? Or show?
The first mic that I did in Austin?
Yeah.
I think that was the Wanderlust mic I had moved here in late June 2022, and I was lucky that in the building that I was living in at the time, there was also another comedian living there, Dodd, and he's been doing comedy for many years, and he told me that this is a good open mic. He took me there one day and slowly started exploring the scene, and it took me, I think, my first Austin booked gig was in January of 2023, so I think it was like 6-ish months for me to like figure out the scene and get to know people and to write more and get my own jokes going.
And how did that experience go for you as far as, you went from excusing San Diego, you went from like this really supportive environment to, there's factions that say our Austin scene now is kind of, dog eat dog, but then there's pockets of like super supportive groups. How did you make your way to sorting out what worked for you in the scene?
I think my personal experience with the Austin scene has been that all the comics that I've met and worked with and interacted with, most people have been super kind and welcoming, and the scene overall has been very welcoming to me. Yeah. So I'm really lucky that my experience has been pretty great here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're being very diplomatic about this.
You're not gonna.
Okay, fine. You're not gonna help me trash anything. I get it. You're just too above board, Ajit. What was? Did you say what your first book show was?
My first ever book show was my first ever time doing comedy, which was the.
No, here in Austin.
Oh, my first book show was Cherrywood Coffee.
Okay.
With
Great
Hunter
show.
Duncan.
Yeah. Is he never talks to me anymore, unless I'm putting him on my show. Is he still co-hosting that, or is that now it's his? Because he had a co-host for a while who married and they had a baby and
I don't know
priorities.
if that show is going on anymore. I
haven't
really?
Heard it's still on my calendar. See, I told you he doesn't talk to me. So
I haven't heard about that show in a while. So
really?
I don't know if it's going
man.
on or not.
Well, maybe if he would answer my calls. Hunter Duncan, you're on my shit list. Tell me if Cherrywood's still going on. I'm probably sending hapless people to Cherrywood. So is there a show tonight? No, but have some coffee and a pastry.
Right.
What have you had some favorite moments? Because now you've had basically a full year in the Austin comedy scene. What have been some of your favorite moments?
One of my favorite moments was, let me think. There have been a lot of great moments, a lot of great shows that happen in town. Let me see. I think you're going to have to cut out this awkward silence.
No, I don't do any sound editing.
Okay.
Have you not pieced that together from the episodes you've listened to?
That's funny. Let's see. I think the show that I talked to you at the Velve was a great time.
Yeah.
I was hosting for Aaron Brooks, and that was such a fun show because right from the start, at the Velve, usually the people slowly trickle in around the middle of the show.
Yeah.
So there were people there right from the start of the show, and they were drunk and they were ready to have fun and they were ready to laugh. So I had a really fun time there. Yeah. And let me try to think. There was. Let me look up what the venue was.
Okay.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
But so there was this little commune in East Austin where there used to be a show. It doesn't happen anymore, but it was like this funky little commune where there was a monthly showcase that was running, and that was such a fun little place because they had after the comedy show they had people twirling fire, and they had like other
Oh,
dancers,
cool.
and it was like a nice little, I was told that it was very old Austin vibe.
Yeah, it sounds
And
like,
yeah, I had a great time, and the show was structured in that there was like a little circle, and people were sitting all around
Oh, neat.
the comics.
Uh-huh.
And it was a great time. I did a lot of, crowd work, and I had a fun time. And that's where I met Brendan K. O'Grady, and he booked me for my first short thing at that time. So
Nice.
it was a memorable show for me because I had a great time on stage on
Yeah.
that show.
Yeah. Has your style of comedy evolved since you've been immersed in the Austin scene?
That's a good question. I think every comic is always evolving and changing in some
Yeah.
way. But I think being in the Austin comedy scene, one thing I've learned is the value of cleaner comedy. As I'm learning more and more about how it's, for me personally, I can't speak for other people, but for me, it's very rewarding to have a clever and clean joke as opposed to a crass
Yeah.
joke. So I'm learning the value of clean comedy more
Yeah.
and more.
Yeah. I'm hoping that as the scene continues to grow, that there is more value to that, because it's kind of, the scene has grown, and you've got one end of the spectrum, this, the crass is a big draw, but I
Right.
think if we're going to be a big comedy scene, we need to appeal to many different audiences, including those that just, they enjoy clean comedy, or they don't think about it. They just, they just want to laugh.
Right.
And if they, I think the funnest thing is watching a comic and really enjoying their work. And only after the fact do you realize, oh, that was a clean set.
Right.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, that is a great compliment to receive.
Yeah.
Because I've done some clean sets, and people have come up and like, "Oh, you were doing a clean set."
Yeah.
I didn't even realize. It feels good.
Yeah.
Because the goal of a comedian is to make people laugh and not to say X, Y,
Yeah.
and Z. So yeah.
Well, last year you also tackled your first, you putting together a show together, and it wasn't just a show, it was like a benefit, and it was a big deal. Do you want to talk about why you decided to take on this big show project?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great segue too, because the show I produced it was called Clowns for a Cause. We benefited Austin Pets Alive, Austin's beloved animal shelter, and it was a clean showcase. So I wanted to, my whole, when I was thinking about producing my own show, I thought, why not work with APA? Because I've been volunteering with them pretty much right from the time I moved to
nice.
Austin, and they do a lot of great work, and I thought, why not, help them out and, give back
Yeah.
to the Austin community. So that was kind of my initial ideation,
Yeah.
and then I spoke to APA, and they were super on board right from the start. And even when I told them that it's a clean show, they were like, "Oh, don't worry about it. We're all adults here. You don't have to make it clean." But I was like, "No,
Yeah.
I want to make it a clean showcase."
Yeah.
And it was a great time. We did our first show in September, and we raised a lot of money. We raised more than $8,000 for
Nice.
Austin Pets Alive.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I definitely want to keep it going. I'm in conversations with APA about figuring out their event schedule for this year, and we're definitely bringing it back. So
Nice.
people listening to it, definitely keep it on your list of shows you want to check out.
Very good. Very
Yeah.
good. All right, we are going to take a break. I didn't give you a warning about this before, but if you have listened to recent episodes, you know that I like to do this break in between where I pick two cards from this card game, Where Should We Begin? And it's open-ended questions. And I'm going to pick two cards here. I've not seen these before.
All right.
You're going to point to the one that you want me to read to you.
Oh, okay, so I can look at them?
No, you cannot look
Okay.
at them. No, you point to the one you want me to read to you.
Okay, let's do this one.
So I'm gonna read this one to you after you read that one to me.
Oh, I like
and
that.
we're gonna practice our improvised open-ended questions.
Sounds good.
All right, so let's go. You go first.
Okay. So the text on it says, "The hardest lesson I've learned about love."
Ooh, the hardest lesson I've learned about love. Oh my gosh.
It's a deep question.
It is a deep question. The hardest lesson? I mean, because sometimes it can be an easy lesson. I guess, I mean, it's kind of a universal thing. The hardest lesson about love is, sometimes you love somebody so much and then they go away. And I'm not just talking about, like a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife thing, but, like losing your dad that you love very much. And then you think about it still to this day. And it's like, oh man, that sucks that they're gone from your life. But while they were around, you built a lot of memories that you can call back to. So, but sometimes I could tell I'm starting to get emotional thinking about my dad. And, he's been gone, oh gosh, what is it, 7 years now. So I think it's realizing, or maybe I think it can be hard if you think about the fact that you could lose somebody that you love. If you just try to stay present and in the moment, maybe that lesson isn't as hard.
I like
don't
that.
know. Yeah. So, that was a tough one. Jeez, Ajit. Let's hope that yours is. Oh, this could be fun. All right. So your question is: a big taboo in my family is ...
How much time do we have?
Are they going to listen to this, do you think?
Probably.
Oh.
A big taboo in my family. So, coming from a conservative society, like Indian society, and my family is also, more conservative in that traditional sense, not necessarily, I don't want to make it sound like political or anything. Like, they're more traditional. And there's so many taboos in my family. Doing comedy, a lot of my family members don't really approve of and don't really appreciate. And in my family, everyone in my family there's a lot of respect and, there's a lot of respect for education and having a good career. And that's what most people in my family aspire to.
Yeah.
That's a great thing. But I think on the flip side, artistic endeavors are kind of frowned upon in general. So it's, some people in my family don't really approve of that I do comedy. And also, like, I do fashion modeling, so some of my family members don't really approve of that as well. So, that's what comes with, India as a country, having suffered from its colonial past.
Sure.
There are a lot of people, the population, there's a lot of, infighting for resources. And in order to stand out and to have a good chance at a good life, education is paramount. So, that's something that is ingrained upon members of my family. But that also comes with it, that also brings with it that kind of apprehensiveness of, like, trying risky things. There's that flip side as well.
Do you have any family that's here in the States, or are they all back home?
Most of my family is back home in India. I do have an uncle in Seattle.
Yeah. Because, hearing the pursuit of creative endeavors, modeling, it would be, I wish the maternal side of me thinks, I wish you had some family that was here so that they could support you, so that they could realize, you're a smart guy who got a graduate degree, who's got a nice job, I presume.
Thank you.
You just happen to also be pursuing these creative endeavors, and it's all making, mom and dad and family, if you're listening to this, look, your kid, smart, is pursuing these creative endeavors, and it's all balancing out, and it's making him a complete, package, as opposed to so solely focused on one thing. And that's okay. It's okay.
Thank you for saying that.
I hope, if they say she didn't know what she was talking about, who is she? But I obviously I've talked to a lot of comics and some people that are just so singularly focused on one thing.
Right.
It's like riding a bike at high speeds. If you're that focused and you hit a pebble, it could knock you off completely on your game, off your game. But if you know how to ride, down a street and you know how to ride down, dirt hills or whatever, you've got a variety, then you're better equipped to handle the pebbles, the boulders, many things that can be impediments along the way. So
I like that. That's a beautiful metaphor.
Yeah. What is it about you, despite maybe having that family pressure or perspective, what is it that has made you willing to branch into creative? Obviously, the comedy was very evident from watching TV growing up, and then having the opportunity of the club. But those could be little dalliances that you throw away after a year or so, but you're sticking with it, and then modeling, which I didn't know about. What is it about you that you think makes you like pursue these more creative avenues of being you?
That's a good question. I think it doesn't have a simple answer, but I think the overarching theme which you touched upon as well is that I want to have a broader life. I don't want to be Ajit the engineer, or I don't just want to be Ajit the X1 thing. I want to try a lot of things. I want to do a lot of things, and I want to explore and live my life. Life is short, so I don't want to limit myself. So I'm always open to like trying new things, and if it sticks, it sticks. Yeah. So it's been a long time coming. Growing up in a very conservative household and a very conservative society, there's always this conscious and subconscious, point of view of, what would they think? What would my family members think? What would they say? In Hindi, there's this famous saying that says, "Log kya kahenge," which means, what would the people say? So this is something that's ingrained upon, even as a child, you're like taught to behave in a certain way, act in a certain way, and do certain things so that the society will not look down upon you. So I think it has been a long time coming, and something that I've actively struggled to like deprogram myself out of.
Yeah. It's so different than how I would say Americans live their life, because Americans are like, who cares what the people say?
Right.
I'm going to let my freak flag fly. I'm going to do whatever I want.
Right.
And maybe mom and dad might be embarrassed if, you do something wild and crazy, but that's just, I think that's a lot of how Americans are programmed.
Right. Yeah. This idea of freedom and personal freedom is so ingrained in the American psyche that it's different from a more traditionalist society like India.
Yeah. Well, mom and dad, if you're listening, he is doing clean comedy, so there's nothing for you to be embarrassed about.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I don't think I've ever broken a fourth wall and addressed somebody's mom and dad before. So, it's a first for everything.
There you go. Yeah.
So you are relatively new in comedy, and for being in Austin just over a year, you've had some great wins. What are some things you're looking forward to besides Clowns for a Cause, which I hope to see come back soon? What are some other exciting things that you're hoping to do in 24? We're early enough in 24 that we can.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think overall, I don't see my comedy journey as like a set of milestones to achieve, but it's more of an internal thing for me.
Yeah.
What I see for myself in 2024 is I want to get better and better. I want to write more. I want to write more consistently, and I want to come up with jokes and stuff that I can be proud of. That's my goal for 2024.
Okay. Well, that's a good goal.
Thank you.
What are some of your favorite things about doing comedy?
I guess it's every comic, I'm sure, who's been doing it loves the comedian's high, that rush that you get when I go up on stage, not knowing how the crowd is going to react, not knowing anyone in the audience, and still spreading that joy, giving them a moment's reprieve, making them laugh and sharing this moment with the crowd and, seeing the whole room roar in laughter that fills me up in a way that just rarely any other thing does. So I'm really, I'm chasing that high. Yeah.
I cracked that code. No, not the same.
Not the same at all.
What are some things that you don't love about doing comedy?
It's a good question. Let me see. Comedy has overall been a very positive experience for me. That I don't know if there are any negatives that I can think of. One, let's see. What is something I don't enjoy about comedy? Man, I don't know if I have an answer for that. Overall, my journey with comedy has been, up and down, but still, I am in love with the idea of comedy. So I can't think of anything that I dislike about it.
I mean, you have stability in other areas of your life that you know that this is, the ups and downs are going to come, but overall it's still a creative pursuit that you're enjoying.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I'm very privileged in that I have a relative amount of stability in my life where I don't have to worry about getting 2 square meals a day or having a roof over my head, that I can pursue comedy. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to challenge you a little bit here because you are newer in comedy, and I have now seen you perform, I think, in 3 different venues. Okay. I saw you at Aaron's show hosting, and the room loved you, and you were great.
Thank you.
You did my show, which is, a weird crowd, very buttoned up, which I would have thought they would have loved you because they're so buttoned up. And then you did Fallout Tonight, which is no reflection on you, but Fallout Tonight, it's still kind of getting its sea legs, so it was a small audience.
Right.
And how do you deal with, like, you go from the room that loves you and cheers and rewards you with lots of loud laughter to kind of that response, because your jokes are solid.
Thank you.
So how do you deal with that? Because newer comics, that's very typical of the learning curve of, these jokes, they destroy in this space. I can't get any reaction out of a different space with the same jokes.
Right. And I think a lot of, it was my tendency when I was very new to comedy. It's the tendency of a lot of newer comics is to their knee-jerk reaction is to blame the audience. But I think that might not necessarily be true in every case. Audience is the way it is. People are unique and different. So it is, I think, upon us as comedians to make sure whatever you do on stage is worth their time and their money if they've paid to watch it. I think dealing with those kinds of ups and downs is part of the game. It just happens. You're not going to have, no comedian has never bombed. That's just not a thing. So I think keeping that overall bigger picture in mind, that after a show, the major question should not be whether I got everyone to laugh or not. The question should be, what did I learn from here? How can I get better? I think if you have that growth mindset, it shouldn't really bother you as much if you bomb or crush.
Yeah. And do you mind sharing some of the things that you take away from from experiences like that?
Yeah, I think sometimes I realize that some of my material needs tightening a little. I was, as you mentioned, some material crushes somewhere, and I don't really think about it. But when it doesn't really land as well, I am able to go back to the drawing board and think does it need some change here? Do I need to drop this bit? Do I need to add something to it? So it definitely, every show, every opportunity is a learning experience. So I think that's what I take away from it.
Since you started from reading 3 pages of material, do you still tightly control, even without the paper, tightly control your word choices and your joke structure? Or are you at a point where you know your jokes very well, obviously, but you're willing to do a little bit of improvisational adjustment on the fly? Like, how much control do you have over your jokes?
That's a good question. I think that engineer's mindset is still with me, where I like the aspect of being precise and doing A/B testing and like precisely checking what if I change the word order in here and there. So I think I still am pretty precise with the way I structure my jokes and the way I structure my punchlines and the set order of my bits. But I do allow for some improvisation from time to time. But I think once I've kind of, how do I say this? So before every show, I decide what I kind of want to do, and I kind of stick to that precise plan. But I do change that plan from show to show, from set to set.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It might not be the exciting answer you were hoping
No,
for.
I was hoping for, something wild and crazy.
That's not me.
No. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want people to know about you?
Something that we haven't talked about that I want people to know. I don't know. I guess we've touched upon the main things. I am really, the central idea, as I mentioned, at the beginning as well, has been of gratitude. I'm grateful to be here in this country and all the opportunities that I've gotten by virtue of all the things that I've, received in my life. And I'm super grateful. Doing comedy was not something I planned upon, but here I am. So I'm super grateful, and people have been kind and welcoming towards me and have, supported me in many, many ways. So I'm really grateful for that.
Very nice. Okay, how do you get into modeling? Not that I want to know, but like how do you add that to your plate?
I haven't really talked about modeling very much in my comedy.
Yeah.
I feel like it's I don't want to come across as douchey or I have to frame it correctly.
Yeah, I think there's something there though, because on stage you seem so genuine and sweet.
Thank you.
That I think there's going to be something there that you can bring that will avoid the douchey model stereotype. There's got to be something there.
Yeah.
I mean, an engineer who's a model and a comic. There's gold there somewhere, Ajit. There has to be.
Thank you. Yeah, I need to dig down and check it out. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure I've spoken to models who are comics before. They tend to be female, so I think you may be the first male that I've spoken to that somehow manages to do comedy and they're a model.
Have you spoken to any Indian comic models?
No, definitely not. No. So again, very niche, very unique, and
that's funny.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see if I want to draw from my pool of other questions. Oh, this is a good one, especially for a newer comic. Festivals. How do you feel about festivals?
Oh, festivals. I learned about them last year when I learned about Moontower here in Austin. Yeah. I volunteered at Moontower last year.
Nice.
I might volunteer again this year, and it seems like it's a great opportunity to meet comics from all different scenes and all over different parts of America, and more importantly, learn about different styles of comedy. Yeah. I think when we have been doing comedy long enough in a city, we kind of know a lot of the comics here. We know what they talk about. We kind of get a feel for a lot of people's styles. It's a nice, refreshing change when you see comics from all over and interact with them in person and talk about their experiences and learn about their styles of comedy. And it's definitely been something that I'm learning more about. I've performed on 3 comedy festivals so far, and I definitely want to keep doing more. And I feel like it has been a great learning opportunity for me, every single one of them.
It's great networking too.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
What are the 3 that you've done?
So the first comedy festival I performed was the Loons on the Lake Comedy Festival in Minneapolis.
Oh.
That was last year in June. And I did the Hudson Valley Comedy Festival just a couple of weeks ago in Peekskill, New York.
Wow.
And I did the Blue Ridge Comedy Festival in December. That was in Bristol, Tennessee.
Okay. Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm definitely, I've learned so much, and I met so many talented and hardworking comics from all over the country. So it's definitely been a great opportunity.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, because if now when you travel, you've got this network. Hey, do you know anybody I can hop on a show?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I've noticed, is that comics everywhere are so kind and are willing to like lift each other up.
Yeah.
That everyone I've met at festivals has been like, oh, let me know when you're in my city. I'll put you on a show. Or, there's this kind of bonding and camaraderie that exists in the comedy world. And the comedy world, I'm learning, is surprisingly small.
Really?
You tend to run into... I mean, I guess the top of the top in any field is rarefied, but even in between, like, newer comics as well, like comics I've met in different cities, we somehow tend to have common mutual comics that we know of or have worked with. So the comedy world is so small that everyone is always looking out for each other. And I love that about the comedy community.
Very good. Awesome. Okay. Well, let's go to my closing question. All right. One word to describe your future.
One word to describe my future. I think hopeful.
You like the full words. From grateful to hopeful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham presents Ajit Krishnamoorthy. Ajit, tell us where we can find you on social media and promote your projects.
Oh, thank you. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at pajama_naps. I keep my show schedules and projects posted on both of these platforms. So follow me there. Okay, very good. And that's PYJAMA. It's one of the best handles out there, I think. Thank you.
One day your star is gonna rise, because I've seen this happen so many with comics that got their start in Austin. They have like really cute handles, and then they rise and rise and rise until they have to like it's got to be my name, comedy. I get very sad about that. But the saddest one is, do you know Vanessa Gonzalez?
Yeah, I love her comedy.
Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah. So when she first started, her handle was Vanessa, and it was BUHNANESSA. Vanessa.
That's nice.
And I'm like, oh man, that's the great handle.
Yeah.
And then you could kind of see as her star is rising, it's like, now it's Vanessa G
Vanessa
comedy.
G comedy, yeah.
I'm like, oh. So hang on to that for as long as you can.
I will,
but the day that you have to change it is the day you've made it.
Right.
So
I hope I never make it then.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed learning about Ajit. Let me say that again. We hope you've enjoyed learning about how Ajit got to be the comedic genius that you heard today, just as much as I have. This has been Comedy Wham presents Ajit Krishnamoorthy. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Ajit.
Thank you.